And I said, well, here's people walking by, here's people talking. And she says, well, you can't talk. That kind of gives you that was like the final obvious. This is what obvious has been going on the whole time. She kind of gave herself away when she said that. And then she said, and these are all kind of, power plays. I have this place reserved. I'm going to call the police. This is my classroom. What else did she say here? Oh, she says, I'm part of the university and you're not. There's all sort of power plays that she was doing to try to take control of the situation so that she could, shut me down.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Willard Preacher Podcast. I'm Matt, a former student at Penn State, and I'm joined once again by Gary Cattell, the Willard Preacher and open-air evangelist on the campus of Penn State University. How are you, Gary?
Doing well, and you?
Doing just fine. So let's dive right into it. So you're on campus. It's the fall semester. I guess things are getting a little cooler as the semester goes on, and you've had some interesting interactions lately. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it is finally getting cooler. I mean, it's been up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. I was actually in shorts day after the election. Usually shorts are done by September sometime. So it's been nice. Finally starting to get cool. I've been in the 50s, which is really not that bad for this time of the year. So anyhow, yes. So it was last Friday. This is some of our interactions on campus. Last Friday, well, to take a step back, there's this professor who brought her class out, maybe on Monday or Wednesday. And they were doing, I don't know what it was, maybe a performance art sort of thing or something. They would just go up to you and they came up to me and I was just sitting there and they said, if you can finish these song lyrics, we'll give you candy or something. So I said, all right, and they gave me some time I never heard of. And they finally said, we will. And I said, I'll rock you. And they said, give me Skittles or whatever. So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was done on Wednesday. So Friday, I'm out there, and when you're coming out of the building, you're on the steps, and there's a big kind of patio area, not real big, but there's this patio area. And then there's this place off to either side where they've got bikes and so on. And over on the left side, as you're facing away from the building, there's a bench. So I've been sitting down there in between classes while classes are going, because we're only preaching while classes are changing these days. And so I'm sitting there, and a guy comes up and he wants to talk. And so we're sitting there, we're talking. He was Protestant, wanted to know about Orthodox. He was a fairly new Protestant, maybe a year, 2 years at the most. And so we're talking about Protestantism and Orthodoxy, and I'm giving him some of the problems with Protestantism and some of the positives about, Orthodoxy. And in the meantime, this professor comes out again. She starts setting things up. And they had this table that they set up, both the time before and this time, just to the left of the bench. The bench looks out towards Old Main, away from the building. Just to the left of the bench, they set up this table, I guess, where they're going to put all their stuff to give to people or something. And so that's going on kind of in the background. And I'm talking to this guy, and we're talking as classes are changing. There's maybe 10 minutes left in the class change, and he says, well, got to go and got to get to class. So we left. I looked down my watch, maybe 8-10 minutes to class change, to classes start. So I said, I'll go out and just finish up here. So I go out and I start to preach, and she comes and she says, I've got this place reserved. And I'm like, yeah, got this major throwaway in and out of the building reserved. I don't say anything, but this is ridiculous. So I said, okay, I'll be done in a couple of minutes. She says, no, you have to get done right now. I've got this place reserved. Now, this is during class changes, right? So the class hasn't actually started yet. So I said, so I'm going to finish up. And she says, and she said something. I said, well, go call the police. I didn't believe she had this reserved, and she didn't show me anything. So let's go call the police. She says, oh, okay, I will. So she calls the police. She comes back and she says, I tried to resolve this peacefully, but you wouldn't do it. My guess is the police said, try to resolve it peacefully. And she probably said, I tried and I couldn't do it. Now, when I said I'm only going to be a couple more minutes, classes haven't even started yet, that was plenty of, we'll resolve this peacefully. She could have just said, well, okay, a couple of minutes, and the thing is, her girls were out there. It was an all-girl class this time. And some of them were out there kind of in a bunch, and they were stopping people as they were walking by, and they were talking to them, even though the class hadn't started yet, they were still active. And I was preaching, and I wasn't bothering them. They weren't bothering me. People come out there and they talk all the time around me. And they can talk, and I can talk, and, sometimes they bother me more than I bother them. Because they'll just stand there a few feet away. Well, they were over, maybe 10 feet away. I wasn't even preaching towards them. I was preaching kind of away from them, so I wouldn't bother them. But so she goes through all this. I tried to resolve this peacefully, which clearly she didn't. So then I get done and I go and I sit down on one of the railings. And she comes over and she says, this whole area here is now my classroom. You can't be here because this is my classroom. Remember, this is out on the sidewalk, public sidewalk, people going in and out. And you can't talk here because this is my classroom now. So I said, so there's people, of course, walking by talking. And I said, well, here's people walking by, here's people talking. And she says, well, you can't talk. that kind of gives you that was like the final obvious. This is what obviously has been going on the whole time. She kind of gave herself away when she said that. And then she said, and these are all kind of, power plays. I have this place reserved. I'm going to call the police. This is my classroom. What else did she say here? Oh, she says, I'm part of the university and you're not. There's all sort of power plays that she was doing to try to take control of the situation so that she could, shut me down. And this is what the left does. And I say liberals. There's a distinction in my mind between liberals and the left. And I got this from Dennis Prager. Liberals used to come out on Willard and say, really don't like anything you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. The left comes out and says, you can't say it. And that's the difference. And that's what she was trying to do. So she left and went back to her class or whatever. And I'm sitting there on the railing for a little bit. And I go up on the wall and I'm sitting on the wall and the police come. She had called the police and maybe 20 minutes later they show up. A guy shows up on his bicycle. I didn't really hear what they were saying because they were a little ways away, but I could hear, she looked at me and she said, he's up on the wall right now. Clearly nothing was going on. And so they talked for about 10 minutes. And then the police kind of just left. They didn't do anything because obviously there was nothing going on. And so I wait till exactly 2:15, which is when the next class change starts. So she couldn't say I was interrupting her class if she wanted to say that, even though that was all bogus anyhow. Remember, all this time she never showed me any sort of reservation. There's no way that you're going to reserve a spot on the sidewalk to have your class. Oh, meanwhile, I forgot to say, she had actually moved the table. This was before the cops came. Moved the table from off to the left to in the center. I mean, not right in the middle, but like off to the left part of the center. Obviously, to show the police that this is where she was making her classroom. This is the other thing I've noticed from the left. They will just lie. Liberals don't usually lie, but she was lying. I'm as convinced as I can be. She was lying about being able to reserve that spot. She was lying when she moved the table out there. Who knows what she said to the police? But with the left, they don't have the compunction. With the left, it's their way or the highway, and they are setting up paradise on earth, and you're in their way, and so you're expendable. So in old communist days, they would just kill you, prison you, torture you, kill you, whatever. Now they try to call you a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe, a hater, a science denier, or whatever. Or do like this. I've got this place reserved. You can't talk. Other people can talk as they move through here. You can't talk. So again, eventually the police, and what I was thinking about doing, if the police did say I couldn't speak there, was just ask them where the line was.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take one step over it and start to speak. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because in the end, you can't let them do the power play. Because once they do it, that emboldens them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple of speakers who came to campus last year, maybe not this fall, last fall, maybe. Anyhow, they were controversial speakers. I forget who it was exactly. And the left had all these signs up and they were going to shut it down and everything. And the university president said, no, you can't do that. They have freedom of speech. Of course, they went out there and they were causing a ruckus. There was all sorts of police out there. They could have stopped it at any time. They were causing a ruckus. And finally, I guess they got in contact with the university police and they said, well, just shut down the event. You shouldn't shut down the event. They have the right to speak. You should shut down the people that are trying to keep them from speaking. In my personal opinion, if you try to shut down somebody's freedom of speech, you should go to jail because that's, you're blatantly trying to, the left always talks about the right trying to, or the conservatives trying to destroy the Constitution or whatever, destroy democracy. Well, when you try to shut down speakers, then you're trying to take away their freedom of speech, and you're doing violence to the Constitution, and you should then be warned. But if you don't stop, just don't go. They'll still take you away and give you a $10 fine. You should actually go to jail. That's the only way you can be able to stop this. But that just emboldens them. And she even said that. She came out the next day and she had this statement. She says, I know that shutting this down probably just emboldens them. Yeah, it does. So if you're out there, I guess the moral of the story is you're out there and you're doing something and you're irritating the left, don't let them shut you down. Take your stand. If you're doing something legal, hopefully, take your stand. Don't give up. And if they haul you off, if they fine you, if they put you in jail, whatever, it doesn't matter because you can't let them believe that they can just shut you down, because then they'll just do it and they'll do it and they'll do it. And they do it by, that basically the campus now is shut down for freedom of speech, except for people like me that come in from the outside. Students are afraid. They're afraid to say anything, especially about transgenderism and homosexuality. Not so much abortion, but abortion's kind of in and out a little bit. But they're afraid to say certain things because, and they'll tell me, they'll say, hey, if I say things, I'm not going to get the grade that I want. Ultimately, I won't get the job that I want. And that's probably true. At least you'll be a man. At least you would have stood for something.
Yeah.
At least you would have stood for the truth and taken the consequences. So which is better? To just roll over and play dead. Do what they tell you to do, say what they tell you to say, be what they tell you to be, only use the words what they say are the right words, never use the words that they say are the wrong words, and just follow them in lockstep, or seek the truth, find the truth, speak the truth, stand on the truth, and take the consequences. That's better. And you'll when you look back on your life, you will have thought that you lived a better life. You sought the truth, spoke the truth, took the consequences, found the truth, spoke the truth, took the consequences, than if you just rolled over. So I can't do it. And what it is, it's for most students, since they don't believe they can know who God is, they're totally materialists, right? So you threaten their material living, you threaten everything. Unfortunately, for a lot of Christians on campus, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I understand it to a degree. I mean, they're spending a lot of money, or their parents are spending a lot of money. Somebody's spending a lot of money to go there so they can make a good material living, and they don't want to jeopardize that. But when do you jeopardize it? When are the stakes high enough that you say, okay, I have to say something now? Because it's not going to get any easier.
No.
I remember one time somebody said to me, well, I'm a student. And he says, I'm not going to do anything now. I'm going to keep my head down. And, and I'm going to get a job. I'm going to move up in the job. And when I get up high enough, then I'm going to say something. I said, no, I don't think you will. I mean, you compromise that many times. Number one, you get used to compromising. That becomes who you are. And the further you move up, the more you have to lose. So now you've got a family. You're probably, if you're up high enough, you're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe. You've got the nice home, you got the cars, you got the pool in the backyard, whatever you got. Are you going to really risk all that? You're not willing to risk a grade in
Hmm.
school,
Right.
or possibly, and I try to tell students who get all wound up about school, the only thing that degree is going to do for you is get you your first job. After that, it's what you did on your job.
Hmm.
You may have to present, you may have to say, yes, I've got a diploma, whatever, but they're not really going to look at that. They're going to look at how you did on your job, right? So if you're not willing to risk a lower grade in a class, you're not going to willing to risk maybe a lower starting place in a job, or even a lower job. Are you really going to risk, all of your social status and your riches and your things once you get up here?
Hmm.
Probably not. So you have to decide, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be? And in the end, who are you going to be able, you can look back on yourself and say, yes, I lived a good life. I did what I was supposed to do. I did good. I spoke the truth. I took some consequences, but, and I had some, bumps and bruises, but here I am. I'm still standing. Or I compromised the whole way through, did nothing, and now I'm going to die.
Hmm.
You know? So, I mean, I understand you have to use, discretion and everything, and not every battle is a battle you need to fight. But when it comes to you, and eventually
Hmm.
it will come to you, you have to be ready. You have to be ready before that, right? You can't just ignore this and compromise and not say anything, and then think you're going to be ready when it really comes to you. You have to get ready now for when it comes to you then. You have to begin to prepare yourself now for when it comes to you then.
Hmm.
And who knows when it's going to come to you? It may never, but it might,
Hmm.
and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that was that experience.
So just a recap, I guess, that interaction with that professor. So she was the one that her class was the one doing those song lyrics on one day. So
I'm
part
pretty
of
sure
her
it was the same
class.
class because they did did this they did different things, but it was the same genre.
Uh huh.
They came up to you and they
So
said
some,
something to you, and if you answered,
yeah,
then they gave you. The second day they were giving away donuts. The first day they were giving away Skittles, and there's other things they could do. Some I don't remember
some really deeply
her because I didn't have to
meaningful.
interact with her. I think she said it was an art class. I don't know. Maybe it was performance art. I don't know.
Uh huh.
But I didn't have any interaction with her the first day, so I didn't really notice her. I
Hmm.
assume it had to be the same professor though. The
Yeah.
second day must have been a different class. Um, and again,
Yeah.
these were all shows of power.
Pretty
And every
brazen.
time they
Yeah.
put a show of power, you've got to stand firm and don't let them do it.
Yeah. Well, certainly keep us updated on all of that. We'll see if she tries it again or if somebody tries it again. Um, but yeah, way to hang in there with that nonsense. Were the police pretty reasonable to deal with?
I didn't actually talk to them. They never came up and talked to me.
Hmm.
So I assume they were because otherwise they'd have come up to me and give me a hard time or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would have just said, well, I want to see her reservation.
Hmm.
I want to see it. Show
Hmm.
it to me. I don't think you can reserve the sidewalk. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
patio area, but basically it was a major, it's probably the major in and out of that building.
Yeah,
And you're
definitely.
just going to reserve that spot and say, this is my classroom now.
Hmm.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's not going to fly. So, and I've been out there long enough that I kind of know this stuff. And it's kind of instinctual. Like I didn't think all these things through at the time, just
Uh-huh.
instinctual. I knew something was wrong here,
Yeah.
and I didn't even think at the time it was still class change. I kind of thought about that later, but I just knew something's not right here.
Hmm.
She's not
Hmm.
something ain't right.
Yeah.
So, I kind of worked it through later on. But once you're out there long enough, you kind of know when these things are happening, and you have to take your stand, and you can't back down,
Hmm.
or you'll always be backing down,
Yeah.
and they'll just get more empowered because these were all shows of power that she was trying to wield.
Yep.
You don't have to get all wound up about it. You just
Hmm.
don't let them do it. Say no, I'm
Hmm.
here. I have
Yep.
a right to be here. This is not a private university. You haven't shown me anything.
Hmm.
So call the
Yep.
police.
Hmm. Yep. Well, yeah, like I said, keep us updated as far as anything else that might come out of that. So,
All
all
right.
right.
Next one.
Mm.
I'm sitting out there with Bro, who's the other guy that comes out there, who's the original Willard preacher. He still comes out. And this girl walked up, and she walked up to the both of us, but I don't know what I was doing. I was reading something or something. I didn't really hear what she said at first. It was something about how did you guys like the election? And Bro said something, and she started talking about abortion. And so she kept going on and on about abortion. So I said, okay, well, what is a woman pregnant with? So the first salvo for me, Bro talked to her for a little bit. So what's a woman pregnant with? She said, oh, it's a mass of cells. I said, no, it's not a mass of cells. Well, what is it? I pressed her a little bit, and she finally said, okay, it's a fertilized egg. And again, the left knows that they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she may have just been obfuscating or whatever. I'm not going to call her a liar, but they know they're not telling you. She knew what it was,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't say it, right? So whatever she was doing, she wasn't being fully truthful. So I said, okay, fertilized egg, embryo, fetus, these are all stages of development within mammals, right? All mammals go through the same stages of development. It's like, oh, yeah. So, well, then what sort of mammal do you think she's pregnant with? And she said, human. I said, well, all right. She said, well, yeah, I see what you're getting at. But I said, and if it's human mammal, it has to be a human person because humans are persons. She said, yeah, I get what you're getting at, but, and she went on to something else. So, Bill O'Reilly has this thing where he says, most people will believe what they want to believe. So she agreed it was a mammal, the woman she was pregnant with. She agreed that it had to be a human mammal. She didn't contest the idea that humans have to be persons, but she was still going to be against abortion or for abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And she just didn't care because she was of that stripe. Now maybe she went home and thought about it or whatever. So we goes on, we go back and forth, and bro chimes in here and there. Finally, she looks at me, well, you can't talk about abortion because you're not a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I said, yeah, you're right. I'm not a woman. But I was a former fetus. I'm definitely against abortion. And I said, kind of going back to the hometown and protecting all my brother and sister fetuses. And I said, look, if my mother would have aborted me, if your mother would have aborted you, there wouldn't have been a mass of unrelated cells. It would be you that's not walking around here right now. It would have been me that's not walking around here right now. Right? It wasn't just a thing. It would have been you that didn't come out of that womb. It would have been you that didn't have all your experiences. I try to make it more personal then. It would have been you that didn't go to school. It would have been you that weren't standing here. And again, she said, yeah, I see what you're driving at. I see what you're getting at. But she was going to stay pro-choice no matter what. But you just kind of hope, like if you're out witnessing and you're putting those things out there, you don't have to beat the person in submission.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember the first time Father John said to me, you don't have to win. I was thinking, of course I do. Can't let them win, right? After a while, I kind of realized, I don't know if he explained it after a while because he said it 2 or 3 times and I wasn't getting it. But when he said, what he said was, you don't have to beat them in submission. You don't have to get them to say uncle,
Mm-hmm.
right? At some point, and I was talking with somebody about this the other day too. I said, look, the time to take a step back and say, well, I guess we agree to disagree. So when you find yourself repeating the same things over and over. At that point, you're just trying to win. You're just trying to make them submit. And if they didn't get it the first time, if they didn't get it the second time, if they didn't get it the 21st time, they're not going to get it. Right. So at some point, it's better to say at some point, if you've had a decent conversation with them, and they didn't come out all angry and whatever. You had a decent conversation with them. At some point, it's better to say, okay, I guess we're not going to get anywhere. We're just repeating ourselves. Let's just put this off to another day or agree to disagree. And they keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and then make them get hardened and angry.
Mm-hmm.
Because then there's no way they're gonna come to your side, or very, very rarely. I've done that enough times to know that this is the case. Once they get hardened and angry, it's very difficult to get them out of that. So you want to try to, if you can, you want to try and stop before that. And a good clue is if you've said this at least twice,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 times, the same argument, and they're saying the same thing back to you, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
And maybe if you stop, you part still on good terms, pray for the person. Maybe God can work on them because we're not going to save people. We're not going to change their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, we're not going to save people. Only God is going to do that. So as Father Peter here says, we give the zero, God gives the one. So
Mhm.
we give the zero, God puts the one in front of it, becomes a 10. We give two zeros, God puts the one in front of it, becomes 100. We have to give the zero, right? We have to do our part. We're not going to save them. Even if you force them into submission for a moment, when they leave, they'll be too angry to, not to stay there. So you give the information and you do it the best you can. Try to stop before you're hardening their hearts, and you let God take it and you pray for them.
Mhm.
It's usually the best, usually when it works out the best.
Yeah, that's great advice. I remember one time that Father John Reeves was our priest in State College, now of blessed memory. Um, and I remember one time there was a Catholic priest on campus, and I can't even remember who it was, but I do remember you, Gary, sort of saying some things about statements that he had made, and that were, in fairness, that were not even faithful to the Catholic faith. But anyway, so there was like kind of not exactly a debate, but just like a discussion of Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. It was in a little classroom in the evening. Um, and it was a fair number of us Orthodox students and then a decent number of Catholic students. And so Father John was sort of presenting the Orthodox side. But yeah, I really, you know, my tendency is to want him to win, right, and want him to make that argument that the other side can't help but accept. But yeah, he did a really great job and kind of let this Roman Catholic priest kind of have his say, but also unfortunately say some kind of ridiculous things. And he said, he was just as really gentle in that situation. And I do remember appreciating that he could sort of present these things, and because they are true, they're just going to stand out from kind of the nonsense, um, if someone's open to that. So yeah, that's great advice, Gary, as far as let God be in control of that situation, you know.
Yeah, and you want to answer all their points,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but
Right.
again, you don't have to beat them into submission.
Yeah.
All right, final one. This guy came by, he was sitting on the same bench that I was talking about, and I was, and bro was there too, and he sat down on the bench, and I guess he had left school. He said he had talked to me a year before, didn't really remember, but he sat down on the bench, and he starts I guess he had left school as a senior, and he had just kind of been wandering around the country, trying to learn about life, I guess. And he was a very interesting guy, very interesting to listen to. He was a talker, so he was talking and talking and talking, but it was interesting because he's talking about his beliefs and his experiences and
Mm-hmm.
so on. And he said a couple of things finally, because it was hard to kind of pin him down. But finally, by the end, I think I had him pinned down to what he was saying. And one thing was, God is everything, right? He wasn't talking about the personal God of the Trinity or even the Muslim personal God or the Jewish personal God, but God is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at that point, I don't even know if there's a God at that point. If God is everything. But if God is everything, then God is both evil and good. God is both the murderer and the person who's been murdered,
Mm-hmm.
the rapist and the person who's been raped, the thief and the person who's been stolen from, right? So, uh, you know, what does that mean? Are there any morals at all? And if God is both these things, both good and evil, then how do you know if he's telling you the truth or lying to you? Or if he's going to do you harm, or if there is
Mm-hmm.
anything such as harm,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are these things actually good or bad? Or they just stop, they're just things.
Mm-hmm.
And if God is everything, then I really couldn't get out of him if you thought God was a personal God. Like if God is everything, then it's hard to believe, it's hard to know whether we even have free will. Because if he is everything, then he's pretty much doing it all.
Yeah, we're
And we
part
just
of
have the
that.
illusion of self-awareness or something. It's really just God. Um, so it sounds good, I think, when people say it or think about it. Um, but in the end, you can't trust that God,
Mm-hmm.
right? God is the stuff you flush down the toilet,
Mm-hmm.
right? God is the rat. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, and you can say that God is, the good too, but you know, and from at least from the Orthodox perspective, and I think this is even true from a philosophical perspective, the evil is a breakdown of the good, right? It doesn't have a positive existence on its own. But I think in this sort of thing, which I was talking to a Hindu guy, maybe a week or two before him, he was saying the same thing. So I guess this is kind of a Hinduistic sort of
Mm-hmm.
Eastern religion sort of thing. But I forgot where I was going with that. But anyhow, whatever. If God is both good and evil, if evil is the breakdown of the good, then God is broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I think you can see that by looking around. Evil does not have a positive existence of its own. There's no place you can go and say, here is the essence of evil. Here's where evil is. And you can
Mm-hmm.
point to Satan and say that, but Satan was once an angel, a holy angel, and he fell to that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing around that I know of, that anybody knows of, that is just where evil dwells, or where has always been evil, came about as evil or whatever, was never good, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So that means God has fallen. So now how do you trust him? He's
Yeah.
not even, he couldn't even maintain his own goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing he said was, if everybody then just followed their heart. Now it's interesting because he said in his travels that he's seen a lot of evil things. But then he says, if everybody just follows their heart, we could have paradise on earth. And maybe he thought, well, maybe that wasn't their real heart, the people that were doing evil. Maybe their real heart is good. I don't know. But he said, if everyone follows their heart, there'll be paradise on earth. Well, clearly that's not the case. You cannot look at world history and say, if everybody follows their heart, you're going to have paradise on earth. Um, because there's obviously a lot of evil in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people were following their heart. Um,
Yeah. And some of the most evil things we've ever seen is where we tried to establish paradise on earth.
right. Yeah.
Right. So that was they intentionally desired paradise, and that was an issue. That was awful as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because one person's paradise is another person's hell.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to establish paradise on earth, and somebody says, I don't like that. This isn't my paradise. Well, you can do anything you want to that person because they're
Mm-hmm.
standing in the way of paradise.
Right.
The ends justifies the means.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what happened with communism. They were trying to set up paradise on earth. And so if you got in their way, they had no compunction to kill you, torture you, put you in jail, whatever they wanted to do to you, because you were getting in the way of paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And the left in America, not the liberals, the left in America has that way of thinking. You know, they're going to use the government, and the government is going to bring a paradise on earth. If you get in the way of that, the full force of the government's going to come down on you.
Right.
And they'll have they won't have a twinge of conscience over it because you're evil, because
Right.
you're getting in the way of paradise.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that where that really comes to bear is like the way that like the teachers administration, whatever, the educational administration and the federal government is sort of wielded. There's virtually no families that want their kids to be subjected to trans and gay ideology stuff, especially
Yeah,
at a young age. And yet, the person who thinks that that is part of bringing that paradise to earth, they're willing to do whatever. And they're willing to
yeah,
label parents as abusers and separate families and do surgery on kids and mutilate them and give them life altering drugs, um, because nothing will stand in the way of their vision of paradise.
right.
So, yeah,
That gets
watch out.
back to this professor. I mean, she lied, she deceived by moving the
Mm-hmm.
table. She lied.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't prove she lied by saying she didn't have saying she had a reservation, but she never showed it to me, and I can't imagine it. But because she's part of that left, not liberal, left, that's
Mm-hmm.
bringing paradise on earth, and you can do whatever, and you have to shut up the other side because they're getting in the way of paradise. You don't. It's part of your duty. It's part of your virtue
Mm-hmm.
to shut them up and get rid of them because, they're getting in the way of everybody's paradise. If it wasn't for them, we'd have paradise.
Right. It's the whole cancel
So,
culture. Yeah.
and
Manifesting.
it's probably how you can see the left, just melting down over
Mhm.
an election they don't win.
Yep.
Because again, they were bringing in paradise, and now paradise is lost, so to speak,
Right.
at least for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah. It would be one thing to, if my candidate lost, I'd be upset, but I wouldn't cut off all family members
Yeah,
or defriend everybody on social media or say that anyone who voted contrary is nasty
evil.
and any other evil name. Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's exactly where some folks find themselves.
yeah. So it's all
Yeah.
about paradise, because you wonder why did they get like that? Well, paradise on earth,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make and the left wants to make a global paradise.
Yeah.
So if you're not a globalist, you're getting in the way. Also, if you're a nationalist,
Mm-hmm.
that's evil,
Mm-hmm.
because there's only way we can make a paradise in these days is to make it global, because everything's so intertwined.
Yeah.
So if you're a nationalist, well, then you're just part of the problem. You're causing division. So yeah, so it's a problem. And the heart, we're fallen creatures. We were created in the image and likeness of God. Uh, we had the image of God by our created nature. We were, self-aware and rational, whatever. And we had the ability to become like God. That way was open for us. And we sinned and we lost it and we fell. And now we're fallen creatures, which means we have a propensity towards selfishness and self-centeredness, because it's always a battle between the gods. And who's going to be God? Well, Adam and Eve decided that they were going to be their own God, knowing good and evil for themselves. Unfortunately, when they fell, now they're choosing good and evil for themselves out of a corrupted heart,
Mm-hmm.
or they could have chosen God, who's the real God, and they could have been godlike. The exact same choice today.
Yeah.
Who's going to become? Am I going to be my own God, doing my own thing, going my own way, choosing my own morals, deciding for myself what life is about? Or am I going to go to the God man Jesus and become like him? It's always the same from Adam and Eve till today. We're making the same choice, and we have the same choice to make. Now, they didn't have a fallen heart like we do. They didn't have a propensity towards the passions and the sinful passions and selfishness and self-centeredness. Their sin was arguably greater. We
Mm-hmm.
still have the same choice to make
Right.
today. Nothing's
Yeah.
changed.
Well, and that's why it's such a. I mean that the kid who you were talking to who had traveled the country, to some degree, it sounds like he's kind of throwing his ideas together. You know, God is everything, and yet each one of us needs to follow our own heart. That's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
But
He's trying to figure it all out. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. And it almost sounds like he's trying to like, I don't know, he's trying to say what he thinks would sound the best or something. But that's exactly why his idea of just following our own heart is such a wrong idea. Because yeah, we're fallen. We live in a fallen world. Everything is geared towards us going in the wrong direction with regards to our hearts. Unless we repent and submit our hearts to the Lord and you know take up our cross, all those kinds of things. But that's not just a natural flow for us. That's like you better be pretty intentional about that.
yeah. You got to fight against all of that. And anybody you can point to, at least the vast majority, who you can point to that you would say is a good person, maybe they are a good person, has still done wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think that Mary, the God bearer, intentionally sinned, and maybe there were some others, I don't know, but for the vast majority of us,
Yeah.
we whoever you say point to say, well, that was a good person, and you ask them if you've ever sinned, you say yes, right? So that heart is not pure until God purifies it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
those are my experiences on campus for the last couple of weeks.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for sharing those, and look forward to hearing more as the time goes on. So should we switch gears and talk about the saint of the day?
Yes, we have a saint of the day. We don't have a quote of the day today, but we have a saint of the day.
Well,
This is an interesting one. This is one of those ones where you don't think that a person doing what he did would be considered a saint. but it also shows that, we can't put God in a box. That, you know, if you'd have read about his life, minus a couple of parts of it, you would have thought, no, this was no way this person would be a saint. Maybe a decent person, a good person who did what was maybe necessary, but he's lifted up as a saint. Okay, the holy martyr Nestor. In the time of the suffering of Saint Demetrius, the myrrh gusher, and we saw his relics. Remember, we were in Thessaloniki,
Yep.
Thessalonica, and they were gushing myrrh, or they smelled like myrrh.
Mm-hmm.
There was a young man of Thessalonica, Nestor, who learned the Christian faith from Saint Demetrius himself. At that time, Christ's enemy, Emperor Maximian, organized various games and amusements for the people. The emperor's favorite in these games was a vandal named by the name of Laius. I kept trying to pronounce this before this. Laius, I think. A man of Goliath-like size and strength. As the emperor's gladiator, Laius challenged men every day to single combat and slew them. This was part of the games back then.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, the bloodthirsty Laius amused the bloodthirsty idolatrous Maximian. The emperor built a special stage for Laius's battles, similar to a threshing floor on pillars. Spears points upward, were planted beneath the platform. When Laius defeated someone in wrestling, he would throw him from the platform onto the forest of spears. The emperor and his pagan subjects cheered as some poor wretch writhed in torment on the spears until he died. These are pretty gruesome games. People say, "Oh, well, football's a violent game." Well, these were violent games. Among Laius's innocent victims were many Christians. When no one volunteered to duel with Laius, I don't know if anybody would, by the emperor's orders, Christians were arrested and forced to duel with him. Seeing this horrifying amusement of the pagan world, Nestor's heart was torn with pain and decided to come forward for a duel with a gigantic Laius. But first, he went to prison to see St. Demetrius and sought a blessing from him to do this. St. Demetrius blessed him. St. Demetrius was in prison, and he was eventually martyred for the faith. Signed him with the sign of the cross on the forehead. So he blessed him to go try to kill this giant. Blessed him with the sign of the cross on the forehead and on the chest, and prophesied to him, "You will defeat Laius, but you will suffer for Christ." Thus, young Nestor went to duel with Laius. So he has a blessing from a saint to go kill somebody, basically. Maximian was present with a multitude of people. Everyone felt pity for the young Nestor, who would surely die. And obviously, the grace of God was with him to kill Laius, and tried to dissuade him from dueling with Laius. Nestor crossed himself and said, "Oh God of Demetrius, help me." Again, it can shake up our view of God and our view of the saints, but I think you can also see where something like this was necessary. And with God's help, he overcame Laius, knocked him down, and threw him onto the sharp spears, where the heavy giant soon found death. And all the people cried out, "Great is the God of Demetrius." But the emperor, ashamed before the people and sorrowing for his favorite Laius, was greatly angered at Nestor and Demetrius, and commanded that Nestor be beheaded and Demetrius run through with lances. Thus the Christian hero, for killing the giant, Nestor ended his earthly life and took up his habitation in the kingdom of the Lord in the year 306 AD. Now, one of the reasons I chose that one, you can kind of see the similarity between that and David and Goliath. Mm-hmm. People think today of a saint as somebody who's very passive, is always going to be very meek and sort of a weak sort of way. But I have not known the saints of God to be like that. Most of them don't kill somebody. But I was thinking today that every saint that I know of, other than maybe Constantine and some of the emperors and so on, that were made saints because of what they did for Christianity, were either martyrs or ascetics. Mm-hmm. So they all kind of did violence to their own body to get there. You don't see anybody as saint who just took it easy, lived a comfortable life, enjoyed himself all his life. Not wine, women's song, because that wouldn't be Christian. But just lived an easy life. You don't see any saints like that. Mm-hmm. So saints aren't what you see on TV. They aren't just meek and mild. They're strong, they're tough, they're good, they're hopefully godlike in many ways. But you get somebody like Saint Nestor, and God anointed him through another saint, and he asked for God's grace, and God gave him the grace to kill the giant, throw him on the spears, and kill him. So, you don't always know. Shouldn't put saints in a box and think they have to look like this, they have to look like that. You look at the lives of the saints. Here's one book you can get if you're interested. Prologue of Orchid. It's very good. I think it has usually a few saints each day, and a couple little, a reflection and a little, sermonette or whatever. And you start to get the flavor of these saints, and it's very good to read every day. If you have kids, very good for kids once they get to be old enough to understand, because kids need heroes, and they don't get the heroes from the saints. They're going to get them from somewhere else. And in this day and age, who knows where that's going to be? It's probably not going to be anywhere good, any place good. But even if they get it from athletes, because they have these hero athletes, and these athletes turn out to be something less than stellar people. Right. So it's better to let them read the lives of the saints, or read them to them, and talk about them with them, and let them have saints as their heroes.
Absolutely. Well, anything more? Anything more to say?
And that's all I got for today.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. That's well, then let's sign off. It does look like it's getting to be a little late in State College, so
It's always late in State College.
I'll say Christ is risen, Gary.
Indeed, he is risen.